Cool. Welcome everyone. We are going to give just 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes here to let folks come in. We've got a pretty full day. So yeah, just give us a moment here. We were having a Starbucks Dunkin' debate before everyone came in. I'm not sure there's a clear winner. I'm not much of a Dunkin' person. It seems like that feels like a Boston thing to me. This wasn't there like a Casey Affleck like SNL skit about Dunkin'.
Get Northeasterners started on their Dunkin', and you'll hear some strong opinions.
I'm like the friggin' mayor of this place. Okay, let's see. We've got actually quite a few folks are in already. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and kick us off, get us rolling here. So I have a script today, which I'm gonna read from. Yeah, so welcome to today's Solution Spotlight. This is a series of webinars we've been doing with our partners to really showcase how members are using the software in the XYPN tech stack. And today we have a really kind of special treat. It's Jim Carlson showing 3 of the different included technologies in our tech stack and how he works those together to create a really awesome onboarding efficiency for better client engagement. That's with fpPathfinder, Wealthbox, and RightCapital. So here at XYPN, it's our mission to help advisors start, run, and grow the RIA of their dreams. We offer all the solutions you need to get your business off the ground running and growing and scaling. Again, RightCapital, Wealthbox, fpPathfinder, our 3 solutions guests today are all included technologies in our tech stack. So they're part of membership. They're really, really highly utilized by members, and they really work together really well. So with that, I am going to just a couple of housekeeping items I want to hit on. I want to remind attendees that the Q&A tab is really where we want all of your questions to come in. I think you may have access to the chat. Let's try to consolidate everything into the Q&A, and we'll get to those. And then a couple of other events that we have coming up on June 25th, we're doing building a set it and forget it lead generation engine for your RIA, and that's with our guest Precise FP. So creating a lead generation funnel and engine out using Precise FP. That's on June 25th. We'll send out links to all of that if Sarah has not already. Thank you so much. And on July 10th, we're going to do an AMA with a member who has changed careers to become a financial planner. So if you're thinking about launching your own RIA or really pursuing this as a career changer, that will be a cool one to miss to make. That's on July 10th. Okay, so from there, we're just going to do a brief introduction of each of the 3 technologies. We are going to start with Wealthbox. And where did my cool bios go? Here they are. Cool. So Andrew Ladwig is the Director of Business Development for Wealthbox. He leads Wealthbox's relationships with custodians, broker-dealers, integrations partners. And take it away, Andrew, all yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, David. And I'll get things queued up here. For everyone joining, I know we've got a lot of Wealthbox users out there. And for those of you that are newer to Wealthbox, I suggest kicking things off and starting right at wealthbox.com. And even for those of you that have been longtime Wealthbox users, a ton of information. Number one, we're going to talk a little bit today about the various integrations and how we work together, especially during client onboarding, but especially for those of you that are saying, I'm using Wealthbox, but what's new? Is there anything new? Absolutely. Right on our product blog here, we put all of our updates, new integrations, product updates, all right there. So I encourage you to take a peek at that after today's webinar. Now, as I'm logged in here, I want to give everyone just a couple-minute overview of Wealthbox who may not have seen it before and showcase a couple areas that Jim's going to dive into in a real-life situation as well. First thing, I'm logged in here as advisor Brad Creedon. For those of you with firms that are looking to grow, you can also create multiple different workspaces, whether it's for different geographic locations or if there's multiple different advisors working within the same firm. Now, the beauty of Wealthbox is not only on the right side of the page is my calendar going to pull in automatically from both Google or Office 365, so I can see everything that's upcoming on my schedule right away. I can see tasks and workflow steps that are assigned to me, important client or prospect dates right along this right side. But really, that ease of use with Wealthbox, and many of you out there have experienced this, is that you're able to use Wealthbox in a very consumerized fashion. So as I go in and I want to add a note here, I can use my @ feature. And from there, I can add a quick note in here. And with one more click, I can post this directly down and into my activity stream. Now that's automatically going to be logged on both that client and household level, or prospect or household level. But also you're able to do things like add new contacts. And as we'll be diving into today, with the ability to onboard new clients, I can add a new contact in less than a couple minutes right off of this page. I can create a task to follow up with them. I can even create an opportunity so I can track revenue generating activities and where I'm at right off of this same page. Now, quickly, as I open up a client page, I can call out to that client or prospect right from here. I can email directly off of this page. And as I open up this client page here, I've also got all my upcoming activities, any workflow steps or tasks that I have upcoming. I can see all emails back and forth right here with this client or prospect. And as we'll dive into with our partners here, I can also take client or prospect information and push it into whether it's various custodians, financial planning services. All can be done right off of this client or prospect page. So again, I know we're going to dive a little bit more into operationally how to help onboard clients and make that process seamless. And with that, I'll pass it on to the next.
Cool. Thank you so much, Andrew. Yeah, again, Wealthbox is included in membership. It's something that more than 80% of our members use and is really the hub of their practice. So with these deep integrations, we're going to see with Jim here in just a second about how they kind of all flows together, how it all links together. So thank you for that brief intro there. Next up, Ted Denbow, RightCapital. Ted has more than 25 years experience in financial services, focusing on information technology, e-marketing, technology enablement, and sales. He's a former registered rep and has joined RightCapital in 2016 as the firm's third employee. He's now their SVP and head of sales. All you, Ted. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you, everyone, for time here today. As mentioned, I'm going to take a quick moment to intro RightCapital, which I know many folks at XYPN are familiar with. But again, for those that are not, we're a full-fledged comprehensive financial planning solution. What really makes us different is our ability to take the complexity of planning and bring clarity to it, giving you an easy to use platform that allows you to engage your clients the way they want to be interacted with. And again, as Jim's going to get to in a minute, connects the dots very seamlessly through many great partners like Wealthbox and fpPathfinder and many others. So with that being said, I'm just going to highlight a few brief items of our solution for those that are not familiar with it. One being, it's very easy to work within the platform. Again, I'm not going to take away any of Jim's thunder, but we have the ability to be a part of that digital onboarding from the beginning, where you can invite the client in to enter as little or as much detail as they like. But what I really want to do is just show you a bit of the experience, because this is really where the rubber meets the road, as they say. Everything in our platform can be adjusted from location, layout. You can custom brand the solution, obviously, so that it looks and feels more aligned with your practice than ours. A few basics to highlight within our solution. We do cash flow analysis. We do goals-based planning. I'm going to highlight a few simple things in our retirement area where really the heart of the plan comes together, where you can build out your proposals, build out your scenarios, and make it really interactive. You have the ability to not only look at their baseline with their current plan, you can build as many different scenarios as you like. But the key thing that many folks like is it's very, very simple to make adjustments and adapt and address the inevitable what ifs. Like, what if Ann wants to retire a few years earlier? How can they make that better than 73% probability success? Well, then we can look at other areas like maybe Social Security, maybe some spending strategies, and quickly and fast interactions, bring them up, address those scenarios, and highlight what ways you may be able to get there, even adding in different approaches. Maybe they want to look at traveling more in retirement. It's very quick and easy to build out those scenarios, dive into the results, and show them the potential impact. We do that across a multitude of areas, not just in your kind of retirement analysis area. A big feature that stands out for us is our tax module, where we make it very easy to have discussions around, what might make sense for drawdown strategies. Do Roth conversions make sense, where you can just set brackets? We'll fill in up to that amount without going over to determine how much they can convert, and show you a value that may bring to the plan. Is it a positive? Is it a negative effect? You can see that quickly, and then see all the underlying details, like how much we're projecting for conversions in other areas. And then the last thing to point out is we really do put a big effort around data visualization. Again, streamlining it, bringing it together. Many folks out there may be familiar with our snapshot. Let's you create a 1 to 2 page summary, focus on what's important to that client. So we can see, in this case, we rolled in their probability of success, some stressors on the plan, details on their allocations. You can pick and choose different widgets throughout the platform to build that experience that's specific and desired to the client. And layered together with that is our blueprint that just gives a nice view of the household, what's owned by who, a timeline of their goals, and then a quick snapshot of their overall income and savings and expenses. And then lastly, carrying on with that theme, as I mentioned, we do cash flow planning, we do goals-based planning, but we also give you a quick and easy way to look at a visual for those cash flows in a manner that's a little more digestible than a lengthy spreadsheet like most views are, where you can take Sankey views of any year to see what's inflows, what's outflows. But if you want all that detail, all that data, it's always in there and allowing you to drill down into it to see all the underlying specifics. And finally, we're also constantly innovating, looking for new features. And we did just roll out a whole new risk assessment tool that lets you bake that into the process, assess their scoring, and you can even customize it to your firm's needs and liking, where you can address scores, questions, ratings, and all of that. So blend that together with many other tools we don't have time to highlight here today. I think you'll see how it really helps and bring it together for that client experience and onboarding to deliver that ideal client experience. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to David so we can keep moving along with today's program.
Thank you, Ted. Yeah, again, we'll just sort of give our stamp of approval here. We really believe that RightCapital is the premier financial planning tool in terms of comprehensive financial planning. It's really that perfect balance of like very sophisticated and accurate analysis projections without just hours and hours and hours of input. It's very easy to use, very intuitive, with awesome visualizations, as Ted was showing for client presentations. So. Which again is why we include this in all three of these texts in the XYPN member tech stack. So next up, Stacia Waren with fpPathfinder. Stacia's the member experience manager, really works to make sure that members and advisors using the platform are being heard, being supported, and that their feedback is making it into the product to continuously improve it. I'll turn it over to you, Stacia.
All right. Thanks, David. Let me get set up here. And to get started, I would like to share a little background on who fpPathfinder is. So fpPathfinder was created in 2018 by co-founders Mike LaCour and Michael Kitsis. So at fpPathfinder, we create checklists, flowcharts, and summary guides around financial planning content. And the idea was really born out of a pain point that Mike LaCour had as a practicing financial advisor. He could not keep the rules straight around deductible IRA contributions. He would forget to ask a question or forget what the limits were and would have to call or email his clients back. And so he made a flowchart using, qualifying questions and summarizing the rules, and he left it on his desk, and his conversations started to flow smoothly. He was answering the questions right the first time. And so he made more, and the rest is history. We now have over 100 guides in the content library, and we add 1 to 2 new guides a month. So here's everything. And we do keep everything up to date as the rules change. So some quick examples of the content we create. So I mentioned summary guide. So this is our latest summary guide, the TCJA Sunset Provision Comparison Guide. Summary guides are just that. It's a summary of the most important information regarding that topic distilled down. And this is a pretty popular download as it's one of our newer guides. Next, another example of a summary guide, and this is our #1 downloaded guide, is important numbers. Our members will typically save this to their desktop or even print it out and leave it on their desk. Funny story, my financial advisor, he had this section right here blown up on a screen, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, that looks so familiar. Turns out we both had a chuckle. It was fpPathfinder. And so this is an example of a white labeled version. So if you're going to or want to share the content with your clients, you can add your own branding on it and share it when it makes sense. The next example here is a flowchart. And so flowcharts are going to be decision oriented. We summarize those rules, we give you a result box, and then from there, you can advise your client. This is helpful at a glance for yourself or to illustrate the complexities of a topic for your client. And last, we create checklists. So checklists are designed to help you flush out the important planning issues and make sure nothing is forgotten or potentially slips through the cracks that you'd want to look into for your client. So maybe you can think of a time where you planned out an agenda, and then when the client came to the meeting, they surprised you. Maybe they told you they purchased a vacation home, for example. Well, that would have been better to know before the meeting so that you could have had a more productive conversation about that impact rather than having to follow up. We offer 3 membership levels, depending on what your current needs are. Each builds on the next, but every membership level gives you access to the content library. Jim is a premier member here. So he's going to be showing you in particular, the interactive checklists. So all checklists, it's about half of our content library, come in a form where you can fill this out and summarize your results or send it to a client before a meeting. They can fill it out and you get those that summary back in preparation for the meeting. And so he's going to be sharing with you how he uses the guides with the other platforms on today. So David, thank you so much, and I will kick it back to you.
For sure. Thank you so much, Stacia. Yeah, fpPathfinder is such a powerful tool. I'm sure anyone on this call has been in a position where they're getting ready for a meeting and just thinking like, what am I missing? Like, what am I not thinking of? And that sort of checklist manifesto approach of like, let's document, let's have a process. Really, really cool. And at that premier member tier, those interactive checklists for meeting prep, for data gathering, really cool. And obviously connects to these other platforms as well. So that is what we're getting to here. We're very lucky to have Jim Carlson join us. Jim is a member, an XYPN member and a financial planner. He uses all these 3 softwares in conjunction in a way that's really powerful that we're excited to share with you. Jim's known for his collaboration with firefighters. They offer specialized financial planning services designed to address career challenges and retirement goals unique to these heroes. Jim is committed to equipping these community heroes with the strategies and support they need to attain financial security and peace of mind. So Jim, if you would be so kind as to train us and teach us, the floor is yours. Oh, you're muted, Jim.
Thanks, David. My name is Jim Carlson. I run a solo RIA based here in Massachusetts. I work predominantly with firefighters, but let's dive into it. Today, we're going to see how the sausage is made and see how we take a client from signing a client agreement to providing them with an onboarding experience that is technology forward and allows us to be able to make sure that we've got the proper guardrails in place to ensure a compliant onboarding experience. Our client file is in good order. And then thirdly, the client is onboarded and we have all the information we need to really begin the planning process. So without further ado, I'm going to start sharing my screen here. We're going to start here. Again, I'm from Massachusetts, right outside of New England, so everything is Patriots based. I need to update this because he's no longer the head coach, but he'll always be the head coach in our hearts here, Bill Belichick. He's our test client. It is not actually Bill Belichick. He is not a client of our firms. And this is fake information. So just before the compliance departments start buzzing, this is just a sample case here. We're going to start from the case of the client signing a client agreement. And how do we use these tools to kind of get going and onboard this client? One of the first things we're going to notice is we've got Bill's information here. We've got the opportunity noticed here as well. I'm going to start. I have an internal process that I start for all of my new client meetings that are new planning clients. It's a workflow. It's called our new planning client reconciliation. If we were to start this, we're going to see that there's a couple of different things that we should be doing to ensure the house is cleaned and we're moving forward. First things first, we want to update this opportunity to engaged. Move this over. Picture over here. Put on the presentation. This is keeping it moving, so when we go through and we run our reports, we know that this is going to show that they've signed the client agreement and they're moving forward with that. We're also going to go ahead and reconcile contact information. Once they've signed that client agreement, we want to confirm their phone number, their legal name. Maybe they go by James, maybe they go by Jimmy, maybe they go by Jimbo. We want to confirm what that actual name is on the client agreement to make sure that that's in line. Also the address, the birthday, and update the client status. So we'll go ahead and we'll confirm those. Again, confirming the client status within Wealthbox. Here's a spot that's really important for us for any future follow-ups with the client. From a regulatory perspective, we want to go down here within Wealthbox to these additional information tabs, and specifically this written agreements area. We're going to want to go ahead, 2024, and update all of these to today's date, the 11th. And I'm just going to do 2 of these for the sake of time here. But these are the types of processes that we want to document as we onboard. What's really important is as we follow up and we do our regulatory filings to alert clients of our new ADVs and our privacy policies, we want to make sure those are all documented in here. So while we're onboarding this client, while we're making sure all of this is in good order, putting this and including this in that onboarding check flow just ensures that we're doing what we need to. We use Box as part of our client file. We'll also go ahead and link that and include linking that to Wealthbox here. So anytime we have the client upload a file or anything there, it's all linked to our secure client file. As I mentioned, the updating. Planning tags. We use planning tags here for our firm that allows us to reconcile not only investment management clients, but planning clients through this planning tag here. So we implement the tag. We make sure to add them to our e-newsletter. We update the Box client folder, and we upload that client folder, client agreement to the client folder. Now, that is how we ensure that the client has been onboarded thoroughly and we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's from a compliance perspective. I'm going to start transitioning now into how we onboard this individual from Wealthbox and our internal orders to now how do we start getting the client ready to be client facing. And that's where we reach out to one of our tech vendors here, RightCapital. Let me pause and take a breath because I get so jacked up about this, I go too fast. As we go to RightCapital, once we've confirmed all of this information is in good order, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to write from Wealthbox. We're going to send this individual right over to RightCapital. The client has successfully been imported. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to look, and we see Bill has come over here. That's the last step in this new client reconciliation. Once we've pulled this client up, now we're going to go over and we're going to start the workflow in this account. We're going to go and we're going to find it for Bill, and we're going to start within RightCapital one of the new workflows. This workflow is specific to Bill, and we're going to start that here. So now as we go in, we'll see the client has been set up. All of their information and contact information has been ported over here, both the cell phone number, the date of birth, the email address. Now we want to start ensuring that we've got this lined up so the client can start seeing how did we send the client from Wealthbox to RightCapital. Well, when we sent the client from RightCapital, there's a send to button here. And if you have both vendors set up and linked together, you can actually send the contact information and this client information directly from Wealthbox right here to RightCapital. So it pushes all that information right over to us. Once we've got that set up, now that we've got this individual in RightCapital, we're going to want to go ahead and we're going to want to assign a set of tasks for that individual so they can hit the ground running once we set them up for that. The tool we use for that within RightCapital, it's called workflows. So within these workflows, we just went through and we set that up. You simply click on the advisor or the advisor page, the right flows, going to workflows, and this new workflow is going to populate directly in RightCapital. What we're seeing here is we're seeing a series of tasks. This first one is going to be all advisor and internal staff facing. Update the client information and push to RightCapital. We'll notice that that was the first step in our previous exercise. So that's what we're going to do there. We've already completed that. Next thing that we're going to do is we want to make sure that the client has the appropriate planning access that we want to give to them. So I'm going to go back to some of these. And this is the planning access tab. If we go back to that advisor dashboard, we have the ability to customize how clients see and interact with RightCapital. It's always been my preference that the first thing the client should see is a list of things that we should have to keep the program and the financial planning engagement moving forward. The things that I also don't want them to see, I don't want them to get bogged down in the weeds as they start logging in and seeing all the different bells and whistles that our financial planning software has. I really try and scrape that down so all they see when they log in are what we immediately need to do to keep that moving. So we've got this template built out right here, and this is what's lined up. After we've gone ahead and we've set this planning template to our new client, we'd also go ahead and we'd encourage the individuals to provide as much information as possible. So I'll go through here. I'm going to open the client now. And for those of you that are familiar with this process, we'll go through in the profile here, putting in as much information as we have. We may not know the exact value of the retirement home or the specific beach home or the exact amount of credit card dollars that they have rolled over. But we usually have a pretty good placeholder for some of these types of style accounts or maybe the values associated with these accounts. Once we go through this, we're going to invite the client over. So I'll go back. Give me here. Go into client access. We're going to go bb@nep.com, and we have the opportunity to invite them. Now that we've pre-filled the majority of the information that they've told us in the discovery period of our conversations, now that they've signed the client agreement, we're going to empower them the opportunity to gather all their information and upload that. So I'm going to put that information in. I'm now going to invite them over. They're going to receive this information, set their account up on RightCapital. And when they come out the other side of RightCapital, once they put that information in, this is what we're going to look at. They're going to come through. And the first thing they're going to see is this onboarding template that we have here. These will have been completed. And the first thing that they're going to see once they get the invitation is the new step here on the workflow. Let me refresh here. All of these client reconciliation tasks have now been completed. The client has been invited. And this new set of tasks is all exclusively assigned to the new client. We're going to send the client the intro email. And once they work through that introduction email, they're going to receive the onboarding questionnaire. Naturally, they're going to complete that, and they're going to come to see this front workflow. And then we have our next set of tranche of questions and opportunities to start working through with the client. This is where we're going to stop. I'll pause for a second and highlight what the next section looks like for us. We've gone through, we've cleaned up our client file. We've invited the client to start gathering this information and start pre-populating all of this information so we can begin the financial planning process. But what's equally important as their raw data is not where they are today, but it's where they're going. So in order to go and have a better understanding of where these clients want to go financially, like every good financial planner, you start at the goals. So what we've assigned is we've used, and we work with fpPathfinder, to use a templated task here within these workflows. We call it our master list of goals checklist. And what we do here is as we go through and we create this, we're going to have a link here embedded. This is through the premier level of fpPathfinder, but when someone comes through, we encourage them to set up their own goals in advance. They're going to click on this as they come through, and the first thing they're going to see is this checklist and master list of goals, private labeled to our firm's logo and name, and we're going to encourage them to complete this before we meet with them. The Get Organized meeting, for those of you familiar with the XY Planning Network, this is before we have that meeting. They're going to go through, they're going to sign the client agreement, and before they have that Get Organized meeting, this tranche of email is going to come open. We're going to encourage them to log in and set up and start collecting and aggregating their information. And on the other side of that, we're going to encourage them to fill out these tasks. That first task is a master list of goals. What we're going to do is the way that this is set up and the integration works here, we're going to notice that the integration with fpPathfinder and Wealthbox is really sweet on the other side of this. But what's really important for these integrations to work is we need to identify that the email address is the same email address for the clients that's going to link this all up. And that's the sweet spot here. So we're going to make sure our email on Bill is the same email we have here on file. And we're going to go click through and start identifying some goals. We know that he for certain would not like to retire early. We know that Bill, I don't want to speak for him, might want that Dallas job. We do need help deciding when to retire. We would not like to slow down. But it's really going to ask them all of those questions you would see as you go through these checklists and as you pull out the paper checklist, whether it's white labeled, whether it's standard fpPathfinder, or whether it's digital. All of these questions and all of these opportunities for deeper conversation and deeper thought really pull on the strings of the planning process to get the client more engaged. This is all here and available to them at the tips of their fingers. You'll notice here, I'm just kind of button smashing through to show what this looks like. But on the other end of this, healthcare goals, talking about tax goals, talking about personal goals, talking about retirement timelines, talking about estate planning and wealth transfer goals. I mean, if we're talking the CFP curriculum, we're running the gambit on the full circle here with what we're covering in these checklists. Lastly, leaving it open for any miscellaneous goals or the client to say, you know what, Jim, I'd like a she shed in my backyard. Whatever those personal goals are, we're here to document that at the onset. Now we go to submit this response. This client is going to submit this response, and it's going to go two different directions. One, it's going to go to them in the form of an email. Two, it's going to come to me in the form of an email. We're going to be CC'd on that. Really what I should highlight. Let me do this in two phases. This email is going to come over immediately. You're going to get an email in your reply that says Bill Belichick has completed a checklist. The master list of goals checklist answers all the different responses that we have, everything that was answered yes, everything that was answered no, and everything that was unanswered. If we scroll all the way to the bottom, we're going to see this pretty little checklist with a moose logo on it. It's going to be those answers, again, private label to our firm, but available and backed up to the client as well. Now, here's where the sweet spot happens. That was completely submitted on behalf of the client. The client went through and worked through those questionnaires at their own time. And now let's go back to Wealthbox. Now we've updated some of their personal information. We've completed some of these new planning client engagements. Let's see just exactly what this looks like here on the other side in Wealthbox. If we go back to this activity, we're going to see a couple different things. We're going to see one, that an update was made. When we completed that first step in RightCapital, that came through and updated that back up to us in the form of a note. This takes a second, it'll come through the other side. Always does take a second. And what would come through at the other side is a list of templates. Don't be alarmed that it can take a while. It goes through the process of an API. And let me pull up, we can work through that. As that comes, I'll work through how we work with the other end of things. So they've completed the onboarding questionnaire. We've done that. They've completed the goal setting questionnaire. They've done that. One questionnaire that I often work through with clients myself, when we're in this first meeting, now that they've gone through, maybe they only complete one questionnaire, but they want to get moving with the financial planning engagement. We're going to go ahead and we're going to schedule that get organized meeting. Now at Carlson Planning, we call it the new client welcome meeting, but it's effectively the same thing. They're going to go through, they're going to schedule this. And they're going to have this meeting sent over. We can go ahead and approve this and complete this. Now, when we get to the next meeting, here's what I'd like to do. And here's where I think we can really start turning up the bolts and showing our competency with these tools. Without even having looked at the plan and knowing the plan's completed, we're going to go through and make sure all this information is in good order. But what we have here is we have the opportunity. Let's just check in before I go any further down. There's a series of different guides that we can use to work through our onboarding. I've gone through and listed some of my favorites. My favorites, obviously, are master list of goals. And the second one is the issues to consider as a new client. This is an interactive checklist I use in the welcome client meeting. So I'll go through, I'll pull this up on my end. And now as I'm in a client meeting, most of us have dual monitors. I'm going to go ahead from my end as the advisor, and I'm going to have this in the get organized meeting. We're going to go through and I'm going to have that master list of goals. I'm going to then follow up and start asking them some of these deeper questions as we're going through, as we're getting these accounts linked and we're working with aggregation to link everything up in RightCapital. As we're asking about any sort of deferred comp plans he may have a golden parachute as he was under contract for another year, whatever those things that we're pulling out and uncovering in conversation. We're also going to work through these top of mind, kind of low hanging fruit issues to consider as a new client. This is a great way to start the planning relationship to show that you have a level of competency that can address the entirety of their needs, both today and in the future. So they're going to ask questions about our family issues. They're going to ask questions about cash flow issues. They're going to ask about your asset and debt issues. If you have any debts with high interest rate, if they click yes on this, we know we can automatically forward over to RightCapital and we can have and pull out that debts module. And we can make that a point to integrate that into our conversation, into our planning goals. If they have annuities, we can do some distribution planning. If they have employer or equity comp, we can go to the stock options tab and upvote that and make that visible. So that's included in the planning engagement. Do they own a primary residence? Similarly, we can go through downsizing analysis and retirement. Tax planning issues, wonderful opportunity to then right size these conversations back to RightCapital to have conversations about distribution planning right here in it. But the client is leading that. The client's going to go through and the client's going to take you, forgive me for clicking everywhere. The client's going to tell you through this conversation where we should focus. So just by having these this rubric in place, I call them the guardrails. It's allowing us to have these conversations and take them and forge through with them and make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's on a comprehensive financial planning relationship. We're going to go all the way through. We're going to have the opportunity to review the notes. So this is where we do one of two things. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send this directly to the CRM. Now that's sent to the CRM. We're going to see that come and populate over here. And we're going to see that populate in two different areas. We're going to see first things first. We're going to see a note come over, and it's going to be that exact note populated over, and that's going to be put in for us with yes, no, unanswered, and any additional notes. And then separately, if anything was answered yes, or if anything was unanswered, we're going to have separate tasks carved out for us right in Wealthbox. As the client goes through and fills out this information, we're just going to come in one morning and we're going to check Wealthbox and we're going to say, hey, yesterday at 10:30 at night, both Bill and Susie logged in, completed their onboarding. Susie completed the questionnaire. Bill completed the issues to consider as a new client, and they booked their next meeting. All of that's going to come in. So Wednesday morning, when you check your phone and you log in and you go to Wealthbox, you're going to see what has surfaced on the top of his mind while he's been thinking about his financial planning overnight. You're going to see that he's booked a new meeting, and you're going to know exactly the places you need to pick up and focus so you can be best prepared for that meeting. Once we go through, I'm going to go ahead, click through a couple of these. Completed, they've scheduled that meeting. We've had that get organized meeting, and now we're on the other side of that. Once we have that get organized meeting, now we really have the opportunity to sit down and digest for a second and say, okay, now we got to do a financial plan. What does that look like? For me, there's a couple areas we like to focus. One of them, I like to call it the low-hanging fruit, but what's the largest planning opportunity when we met with this client? After they listed their goals, after they went through the new client checklist where we identified all the low-hanging fruit, what is the most meaningful thing that the client were to walk away and implement that they would be better for? That's where I like to start, because so many times if you do a thorough job of going through and asking the right questions, like many of us have found in financial planning, you have an absolute laundry list of things you need to take care of. And quite frankly, clients' heads can be spinning. There's just so much to go through that they get disincentivized or they're turned off by the planning experience. So in order to make it palatable, I've found that choosing one thing to tackle is the best way to eat an apple, best way to eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So through this, we'll identify the largest planning opportunity. We'll also confirm their why and their financial goalposts. We're going to do ahead and we're going to run a liquidity analysis to make sure that they've got enough cash on hand to meet their emergency fund. And then depending on where they are in life, we're going to run a savings or a withdrawal analysis to make sure that they're adequately saving and socking money away for retirement, or that they're not burning through their retirement nest egg at a rate too quickly. After we go through that exercise, naturally, our next step in the onboarding process is to invite them to our investment custodian at Betterment, where we would walk them through the client onboarding and the paperwork for there. So a client would complete that, an advisor would complete those tasks. And on the other side of that, what we would see is we would see this available to us here. Largest planning opportunity, retirement, stress test. And his statement of financial purpose is deciding long, successful career, looking for the next chapter. Something along those lines that synthesizes where they've come, what's important to them, and where they're going. And with that, that's kind of our financial goalpost, not to use the corny football line and stay on brand. But in this situation, we really do want to know, everyone wants to retire. Do some people want to retire and go to the beach, or do some people just want to retire because they hate their job so much they never want to go there again? Those are two different planning goalposts that we would solve towards. So having an understanding of that and making sure that everyone's on the same page before you do all that work is super critical, and I think just helps cement relationships with clients for the long term. So what we've seen here is we've seen a couple different ways that these all fit together. We've seen that we're using Wealthbox to keep a compliant and a clean file, to make sure everything is the central repository and database. So we're pumping notes back in here from both RightCapital and Wealthbox. We're also sending data out to these partners and providers to make sure that they have accurate and up-to-date information. We're using these tools and these things as a visibility for clients to be able to view, and for clients to be able to view and stay on the same page in this planning process. No longer is there a black box on what is Jim going to do before he comes back with this recommendation. I'm not going to pain funnel him. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to take him through a series of questions to highlight where we should focus our attention. And on the other side of that, we're going to see a couple different things. We're going to see that liquidity analysis I mentioned, whether we need to allocate more to cash, or we've graduated that chapter in the financial planning process. We're going to see where our tasks are and what are the things that we would naturally look to follow up on. We'll see if they've linked accounts, what those trolling expenses are for 3 months. And we'll see if they have any need for life insurance or any sort of insurance need that they haven't acknowledged. That is an immediate opportunity to triage and make sure that they have the coverage they need. That's utilizing the snapshot, that's utilizing fpPathfinder, and that's utilizing RightCapital all in one to make sure that that cohesive experience is provided to them, to the client. I'll pause for a second, take a break, and appreciate everyone and kind of open the floor from there.
Cool. It's really awesome, Jim. Thank you so much for taking us through that. We all got a chance to see sort of a sneak peek of this in prepping for this webinar, but it's a really thorough process. It sparked a lot of good questions. So I'm gonna throw these at you kind of quickly, but I think there's some cool stuff for us to hit on. Specifically, there's a question about which tier of Wealthbox you're using. But I think if you could just hit on fpPathfinder again, Wealthbox and RightCapital, what tier are you using? Why? What functionality do you really need that made you want to upgrade to that tier?
So the functionality for Wealthbox, I believe I don't have the enterprise. I believe I have one down from the enterprise in regards to Wealthbox. I appreciate that unlocks the functionality I need for it on that tier. In regards to fpPathfinder, I do have the Premier, and I'm grateful for it. fpPathfinder and Wealthbox were actually some of the first pieces of technology to fit in the tech stack. I was adamant that, and actually speaking in this venue, I can kind of step on a soapbox for a second. My career was born out of a credit union. At a credit union and part of Bank Alliance programs, they're very encouraging to sell commissionable products to non-traditional wealth management candidates. And because of that, that is incongruent with my value system. So being able to stand out and say, no, we're actually going to add some value for this dollar sign. We went out and ventured to build a subscription-based financial planning engagement for our members. Regardless of if they had any assets to manage, they needed answers. They had questions and they needed answers. So we looked and were very fortunate to come across fpPathfinder at the very infancy of our program. And they have been a crutch, a tool, a lifeline, and we're grateful for that. I couldn't imagine life without fpPathfinder and the road we've been trying to actually add value and look under all the right rocks for our clients. So we've been a Premier member, and as soon as they've continued to add resources that integrate deeper with our tech stack, we found that Premier works for us with fpPathfinder. As it relates to RightCapital, I might introduce Ted to go over the different tiers a little bit more, but there is a separate line item for the workflows, and I appreciate how that has allowed us to have a central repository that just pumps back to Wealthbox. Everything comes into Wealthbox, and when we check Wealthbox, we know where everything stands with every client.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Just to add on, again, we have 3 different tiers. I believe Jim's on our premium tier. It's our middle tier that gives you all the cool features. But a lot of what today was around was our right flows. That is an add-on component. As you mentioned, it highlighted that lets you connect with the client, connect the dots, and link right into Wealthbox. So I know there were some great questions already answered around that. Feel free to reach out to us. We can go through the details of how to add that onto your account if you'd like to. So thanks, Jim. I'll jump out there.
Cool. I'll just second everything you said about fpPathfinder. The farther you go up those tiers, there really is just a bunch of cool additional value that you'll unlock. In terms of Wealthbox, we really do suggest that everyone start on Pro. We do offer basic for free, but the Pro tier really is important for both the email functionality and the workflows to be enabled. And then, yes, also on RightCapital, budgeting really important.
I don't mean to cut you off, but yeah, what I have found most valuable within Wealthbox, 2 things. One, CRMs, and anyone that's had any familiarity with CRMs knows CRMs are a great repository for data, as long as you don't have to fat finger the things in. And it's manually queuing these things in that creates the time suck, that creates the error, that creates the gap and the lack of adoption. So the more and more ways that you can get this information populated into the CRM without having to take out and type those in manually, that's where I see these efficiencies of small advisory shops unlocking themselves exponentially, is letting the clients take that data and input that data for you. So you can just synthesize it. And by taking that time out of manual entry, that's where I see these superpowers really unlocked for the solo RIAs and the small RIAs.
Great call. Great call. And data management isn't critical until you realize it is. It's just like you get to a certain point, your first client, you're like, I can keep track of that. It's on my notes or my notebook. And then as you grow and grow and grow, man, you hope you had good hygiene along the way. So second that. I'm going to jump to the next one here. This is the question I asked you in prep for this, Jim. It's just, you've got workflows in Wealthbox, you've got them in RightCapital. How are you deciding what to put where, when to use which of those two platforms for your workflow management?
Are they a client? Do you want them to see it? Do you want, yeah, that probably is the beginning and the end. I think for a lot of the in-house stuff, you don't want the clients to see whether you updated their most recent ADV disclosure notice. As we go back to some of this additional information, having a workflow that says, make sure you update their last CRS offer date. Well, the client probably cares very little about that, if at all. Your regulator sure does. You want that thing documented, make sure it's in there though. So it's that reason we're making that data point that's held and reconciled in Wealthbox not being client facing may make more sense. If you're going through, however, on the other side of this and you're like, what did this guy even do to validate this? Well, you can know that you've worked through and you went through all of these different checklists and cleaned the file, reviewed the liquidity analysis, calculated the savings rate, worked through to, show that you danced for your dinner, for lack of better diction, and showing that you're making these efforts to move the planning relationship forward. Keeping those things client facing can be really helpful when a client sees the stock market went down that day and says, does Jim have my back or what's been going on? You can say, hey, here's the ledger of everything we've done to validate the planning fee over the last year.
That's huge. Yeah. Measuring your value. It's just like we all do in work. Sometimes you check something, you check a box, get something done, move on. And so having a ledger of all that value that you've added, super critical. That's very helpful.
Another thing to note too, depending on the workflows, as you complete these tasks, both you and the client are going to get email alerts and updates. So you can open up a tranche of work. You can go ahead and you can create a schedule for your quarterly clients. In your quarter 4, you can go through, and as every client goes through and works through these, whether they're the type A individuals that are going to work through it the second they get the email, or there are people that are going to get the third, late email that says this email is overdue and they finally get to it. Again, that's all data that you can see how many, you learn more about the clients, you learn more about these people going to get this over the goal line themselves, or you're going to have to intervene here to say, hey, by the way, we have a bunch of questions for you to consider by the end of the year. Do you want to consider any tax loss harvesting or any capital gains? That's a way to be front of center to say, hey, I know you've been busy, but we've got your back here and we want to follow this up with some time sensitive end of the year planning opportunities.
Yeah, and behavior change is the name of the game. How do you stay in front of folks and get them to take action? And so those types of alerts, pretty helpful. I don't know if you'll have much to speak on about this, but there's a question about document management, document storage. How did you choose between Box, RightCapital's Vault, and some other document? Maybe use multiple, some for internal, some for external. Is there anything you want to share about that?
The ability to confirm your books and records are archived and custodied with fail-safe procedures and protocols in line. So there's client-facing storage that may be appropriate, and there are where your books and records stored. And through that exercise, when we went through that at the infancy of our RIA's birth, we came out that exercise, and we were not actually working with RightCapital as we introduced our firm. We were, I think it was Money Guide Pro at the beginning. So we were very grateful to see the light and come across RightCapital shortly after that, but we had already kind of locked in with Box. So just make sure that whatever document storage solution you're using, be mindful that there is client-facing storage solution and there is books and record storage solution. So to each their own. I guess I'll throw my hands up and say defer to your compliance.
That's fair, and I think that's helpful. This next one I find really interesting, and we don't have a ton of time, but if anyone else does want to jump in, the question is there's 3 different softwares here. They all have a lot of really cool features and functionality. You've clearly done a lot of customization within each. How does someone efficiently get familiar with all of these different platforms and kind of how they work together. I mean, what was your process, Jim?
So I'm wearing pomade today, but if not, you can see that the corner of my hairlines are thinning, and it's because you take enough casework through review and you work with enough casework, you realize that there's got to be a smoother and more efficient way. And particularly what I noticed in working through to find how each of these are going to fit, I'd say look at each of them in a vacuum, and particularly we'll work with the planning softwares. Think about Wealthbox as kind of the hub, and think about plugging everything back into Wealthbox as it relates to the planning tools and the different softwares on the tentacles, if you would. I'd say when you're going through RightCapital, you don't need to talk to a client about every single one of these different individual thumbnails and planning opportunities, but I would have an understanding of who your avatar is for your ideal target client. Where I work with a lot of firefighters, the idea of having an understanding that you're going to have to do some pension analysis is inevitable. So being able to lean into what that may look like for certain clients. The idea of right sizing how you'd like people to view this. I'd say start looking at this software as if you were your ideal target client and say, what do I want answered in looking at that? And then secondly, if you were going through that similar exercise with fpPathfinder, I'd say go to fpPathfinder in the members section and go to the guides and just go through guides and say which ones are the most important to my clients. You're going to know that in the course of the last year, for me, I always say master list of goals, issues to consider as a new client are such no-brainers to hit the ground running on a good planning relationship. It just kind of that's the free low-hanging fruit for today. But from there, as I go through and I look at my different clients, these are the favorites that I use for almost every firefighter. Will my Social Security benefits be reduced? Those that are familiar, firefighters don't always, qualify for Social Security. Where should my next dollar go? For every single individual, that you're going to want to talk to them about saving more and upticking that. And then furthermore, you can just go through and right size those. But I'd say, again, just look at this as if you were one of your clients in pain and you were going shopping for education for your clients. By understanding those tools and resources, from there, using hyperlinks to piece those user experiences together. That seems like how I've kind of bridged that together. I don't know if it's a long-winded question to get there, but through tinkering, toying, and ultimately just trying to solve what the clients want.
Cool. That's helpful. I'll point folks to a few others. There is in our academy, there's a launch course that goes through the XYPN tech stack at a high level. We're not getting into features and in-app demos, things like that. Those are things that you really want to go to that team for. So RightCapital, Wealthbox, fpPathfinder to really understand the deep functionality. I'll say you're going to get the recording to this webinar, and this is kind of the cheat sheet. These types of webinars that we do with our members who have really become experts in this. You can see again that Jim has spent a lot of time on this and building out customized workflows and things of that nature. There are some XYPN workflows that are built out in Wealthbox. If you are an XYPN member, I would say that they're a good starting point. They're not to the level of detail of what Jim has built in here. But those are some resources. And then also within our knowledge base, if you pull up any one of these platforms in the knowledge base article, you will see links to resources to get trained up. But I think that's part of the power of the network is this type of sharing of best practices is just not, I think, for many of us in the circles that we run in, this is sort of the norm to share what you're doing with other advisors, but that's not really true of the industry. And so really want to thank Jim for all of your time and just kind of opening up your practice for us and showing us how you do all this. I'm going to wrap up with just a couple of housekeeping items. It's actually something that was not on our agenda here, but I do want to share. There were a number of questions around tiers and features, and I think specifically with regard to what does XYPN offer? Sarah, I'm going to share this with you in Slack if you wouldn't mind sending that out. We have a new calculator to kind of go through and build your firm and try to understand what your savings would be. Go to the individual platforms' websites to understand exactly what the features are. But again, with Wealthbox, we really recommend almost everyone start at the pro level. That's probably true of RightCapital as well. And then I think, with fpPathfinder, I think you can get started, get your feet wet at the included level. But as you start to really implement this in your practice in the way that Jim has as a foundational tool, there is just so much cool functionality at the higher tiers. So hopefully that is a useful resource. Let's see, other things I want to hit on. I think we're slacking out, or we're sending out ways to get in touch with each of these teams. Those will also come in the follow-up email, which again will have the recording. There's going to be a feedback survey after this webinar. If you wouldn't mind just giving us just taking a second to give us your thoughts on how you think we did today. And then, yeah, schedule a call with our team if you're interested in considering joining XY Planning Network or thinking about launching your own firm, seeing what free resources we have available. We're here to help you. So again, thank you so much, Jim, Ted, Andrew, and Stacia. It's awesome to have you all. Really appreciate you. Have a nice day, everyone.